Donald Trump's pick for Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on Thursday said the U.S. dollar should remain the world's dominant currency. The Federal Reserve should stay independent, and tougher sanctions should be imposed on Russian oil. But he said extending Trump's 2017 tax cuts was his top priority in testimony at a Senate Finance Committee confirmation hearing.
If we do not renew and extend, then we will be facing an economic calamity. We will see a gigantic middle-class tax increase.
The Trump tax cuts are due to expire at the end of this year. Bessent wants to make them permanent. The hedge fund manager and founder of Key Square Capital Management also voiced support for Trump's plans to impose steep tariffs in an exchange with Democratic Senator Ron Wyden.
I believe these tariffs, you can call it whatever you want in terms of trying to gussy it up. They're going to be paid for by our workers and small businesses.
Senator, I would respectfully disagree. And the history of tariffs and tariff theory, optimal tariff theory, does not support what you're saying.
Bessent argued that tariffs would lead China and others to cut prices to maintain market share, raise government revenues, and increase U.S. leverage in negotiations. When it comes to the Federal Reserve, Trump has said presidents should have a say over decisions it makes. But Bessent expressed a different view, at least when it comes to the interest rate decisions made by its Federal Open Market Committee, or FOMC.
I think on monetary policy decisions, the FOMC should be independent.
And despite Trump's longstanding complaints about a strong dollar, Bessent said it was critical to ensure the dollar remains the world's reserve currency.
This is the single most important economic issue of the day. This is pass-fail. That if we do not fix these tax cuts, if we do not renew and extend, then we will be facing an economic calamity. And as always, with financial instability, that falls on the middle and working class people. We will see a gigantic middle class tax increase. We will see the child tax credit halved. We will see the deductions halved. So it will be what we call in economics, it has the potential for a sudden stop. And as I said, traditionally with these sudden stops, it falls on working Americans.
American filmmaker, writer, and artist David Lynch has died at age 78, according to his family on Thursday. Lynch is best known for co-creating the groundbreaking TV series Twin Peaks and directing films including The Elephant Man, Blue Velvet, and Mulholland Drive, which was named the best film of the 21st century so far in a 2016 BBC poll. Lynch also won Best Director Oscar nominations for all three films. His films were known for their visually stunning style, and his often disturbing and inscrutable works were filled with dream sequences and bizarre images. Lynch was considered a master of surrealism and one of the most innovative filmmakers of his generation. He received an honorary Academy Award in 2019 for his lifetime achievements. His style of filmmaking prompted the term Lynchian, which Vanity Fair magazine described as weird, creepy, and slow. He told the Guardian newspaper in a 2018 interview, quote, "A film or a painting, each thing is its own sort of language, and it's not right to try to say the same thing in words. The words are not there." The acclaimed director was married 4 times and fathered 4 children. No cause of death was released. Lynch disclosed in August 2024 that he had been diagnosed with emphysema, a lung disease caused by many years of smoking. A statement on Lynch's Facebook page attributed to his family said, quote, "There's a big hole in the world now that he's no longer with us. But, as he would say, keep your eye on the donut and not on the hole."
Donald Trump's former personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, will be able to keep his Florida condo and Manhattan apartments after settling with 2 Georgia election workers he falsely accused of helping steal the 2020 election. In a statement read by his lawyer, Giuliani said, quote, "I and the plaintiffs have agreed not to ever talk about each other in any defamatory manner, and I urge others to do the same." The workers said they had been compensated as part of the settlement, without saying how much. The settlement came on the same day a civil trial was set to begin in Manhattan federal courts. Instead, Giuliani's seat in court remained empty. The judge was to decide if the election workers could seize Giuliani's properties and personal assets, including 3 Yankees World Series baseball rings, in order to help pay off a $148 million judgment the election workers won after a judge found that Giuliani defamed them. Giuliani has twice been held in contempt of court over his treatment of the workers. In one instance, he falsely claimed there was video showing the workers concealing and counting suitcases filled with illegal ballots in Atlanta. Giuliani has already turned over some assets, including a 1980 Mercedes-Benz, to help pay off the $148 million judgment. Outside of court in November, Giuliani told reporters he was broke.
The reality is, I have no cash. It's all tied up. So right now, if I wanted to call a taxi cab, I can't do it. I don't have a credit card. I don't have a checking account. I have no place I can go take cash out except a little bit that I saved, and it's getting down to almost nothing.
Once praised for his response as mayor to the September 11th attacks, Giuliani's reputation has fallen into tatters. Giuliani has pleaded not guilty to criminal charges in 2 states for trying to overturn Biden's 2020 victory over Trump.
Edna dos Años Nacimiento Sequeira, known as Brazina, climbs an acai palm tree in her village of Ilha da Jussara in Brazil. She's harvesting acai berries, a superfood known for its nutritional benefits and used globally in juices, cosmetics, and supplements. Growing the tart fruit is a major source of income for the village, and production has grown around 50% in the last decade. That's thanks to Bessent and a dozen or so other women in the village who fought to secure sources of credit.
There's a lot of value here, but we haven't yet managed to organize ourselves so that we can earn more. This is our black gold, as we say.
Bessent is 60 years old and grew up watching her father climb the village's acai trees.
At first, the husbands took care of the product, of the production. Then we, the women, started to move. Can we organize ourselves?
She was the first woman to participate in meetings to discuss funding to grow the village business. According to Government Sustainable Development Agency Emitter, the involvement of women in such small-scale businesses has grown fast in rural Brazil. In 2021, almost half of the rural credit from a federal program overseen by Emitter that supports smallholder farmers benefited female producers, it said. The initial investment in projects like the acai of Ilha da Jussara is around $3,300. After that, it's financially self-sustaining, according to an agronomist at Emitter. Acai berry production in Brazil grew 15% between 2020 and 2023, according to government statistics. Para State, where Ilha da Jussara is located, accounts for 94% of the country's output and is a top exporter of the fruit to companies around the world. Some 200 people are dedicated to organic acai production in the village. During the harvest, families can make fourfold the region's minimum wage. Total sales are about $225,000 a year, over 85% of the community's income. Bessent says the business has helped villagers prosper.
We've achieved a lot with my friends that are part of it. Now we are a bit apart, but we continue in the same business, in the same place. And they are also doing very well. They have their own little house, their own little stove, their own bathroom. And for us, it's changed a lot. Thanks to God.
I'm here to ask for your support. I'm here to earn your trust, to lead that fight. I'm back home in Edmonton to declare my candidacy for leader of the Liberal Party and Prime Minister of Canada. Canada needs change, but not just any change. We need change that works for people, and we've never needed it more. So if you remember one thing from what I say today, remember this. I am going to be completely focused on getting our economy back on track.
The UN says war-ravaged Gaza will need billions of dollars to rebuild. Israel and Hamas have now agreed to a ceasefire deal, but it is unclear when rebuilding efforts might begin and how they would be funded. After 15 months of conflict, here's a breakdown of the destruction in the Palestinian enclave. The Hamas attack on Israel on October 7, 2023 killed 1,200 people, according to Israeli tallies. Gaza's health ministry says Israel's retaliation has killed more than 46,000 people. Gaza has been reduced to 46 million tonnes of rubble. The UN warned last year that removing it would take 14 years and cost $1.2 billion. The rubble likely holds human remains. The Palestinian Ministry of Health estimated in May that 10,000 bodies were missing under the debris. The UN reported that rebuilding Gaza's destroyed homes would take until 2040, but could drag on for decades. The agency's data found that 2/3 of Gaza's pre-war structures have been damaged or flattened. That amounts to over 170,000 buildings. Within that, the UN estimates, is the destruction of over 245,000 housing units. That's while over 1.8 million people in Gaza are in need of emergency shelter.
Hamas has played the spoiler.
US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has said neighbouring Arab countries aren't keen to help rebuild Gaza if it will be, quote, levelled again a few years down the line. The UN estimated damage to infrastructure totaled $18.5 billion in January 2024. This included destruction of government buildings, hospitals, schools, universities and mosques. An update a year later showed that less than a quarter of the pre-war water supplies were available, while at least 68% of the road network has been damaged. Hunger is widespread in the devastated enclave. Yet, UN satellite images reveal over half of Gaza's agricultural land has been degraded by conflict. In 2024, the international agency found that over 95% of the enclave's remaining cattle had been slaughtered or died since the conflict began.
Some Palestinians in Gaza struggled on Thursday to celebrate a ceasefire deal being struck as they mourned loved ones killed in Israeli strikes within hours of its announcement. Among the dead and wounded were children. This man said his niece was playing in the yard when she was hit. Is this the truce they're talking about? What did this young girl, this child, do to deserve this? He asked. The complex ceasefire and hostage exchange agreement between Israel and militant group Hamas is set to take effect on Sunday. It was mediated by Qatar, Egypt and the US following 15 months of bloodshed that devastated the Palestinian enclave. But following its announcement on Wednesday, Israel intensified strikes on Gaza, residents and authorities said, killing dozens overnight. The Israeli military is looking into the reports, a military spokesperson said. According to an Israeli official, the country's security cabinet and government were set to vote on the ceasefire deal on Thursday before it could officially be accepted. However, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has accused Hamas of making last-minute demands. A statement from his office said, quote, "The Israeli cabinet will not convene until the mediators notify Israel that Hamas has accepted all elements of the agreement." A senior Hamas official said on Thursday the group is committed to the ceasefire accord. Hardliners in Netanyahu's right-wing government were still hoping to stop the deal, with some ministers threatening to quit their posts, though most ministers were expected to back it. In Gaza, meanwhile, residents are holding their breath for a change in their circumstances. This woman said her feelings about the truce were indescribable. Thank God it was struck after all the suffering we've been through, she said. The suffering, honestly, is indescribable. Displacement, hunger, extermination. This father of four said he's just hoping that they don't lose more loved ones in this crazy war in the remaining time before the ceasefire comes into effect.
On the ceasefire, yes, I am confident, and I fully expect that implementation will begin, as we said, on Sunday. Look, it's not exactly surprising that in a process and a negotiation that has been this challenging and this fraught, you may get a loose end. We're tying up that loose end as we speak. I've been on the phone in one way or another all morning with Brett McGurk, with our Qatari friends, and I'm very confident that this is moving forward, and we'll see the start of implementation of the agreement on Sunday.
Tahrid al-Dakour hopes she will soon be reunited with the children she's been separated from for over a year. She arrived in Khan Yunis from Gaza City with her husband and some of her children in October 2023 as war erupted between Israel and Hamas. But as a ceasefire and hostage release deal was announced on Wednesday, al-Dakour started packing.
This is the bag that I came with from Gaza City. I have prepared it, so when they tell me that there will be a ceasefire, I will take it and leave, even if I have to go by foot. I can't wait. I really miss seeing my children, my family, and my siblings.
The truce is set to start on Sunday, after 15 months of bloodshed that devastated the coastal territory and inflamed the Middle East. In Gaza City, around 15 miles from where al-Dakour is packing her bags, her son Yusuf sits on the rubble of their destroyed home. He has also been waiting for news of a ceasefire.
I see photos of my family on the internet, on social media. It's as though we do not know each other, due to the changes in features and the emaciation of their bodies. The situation is very difficult.
Seeing his family again, he says, will be a, quote, beautiful feeling of happiness and joy. The deal announced on Wednesday outlines a 6-week initial ceasefire with the gradual withdrawal of Israeli forces from the Gaza Strip. Hostages taken by Hamas would be freed in exchange for Palestinian prisoners held by Israel. If successful, it will end the fighting that has killed tens of thousands, according to Gaza health authorities, left much of the Palestinian enclave in ruins, and displaced most of its population. But al-Dakour says this is a war that will not be forgotten. It is a, quote, painful memory, she says, that will, quote, stay with us our whole lives. It is all sadness and extermination.
This unmanned device is Ukraine's latest advancement in its nearly 3-year-old war with Russia. It's a machine gun-equipped vehicle, operated at a distance by Ukraine's Hartia brigade. With no crew on board, It spares soldiers from an infantry assault that comes later. Unit spokesman Volodymyr Detirov.
Завдання – це по максимуму перекласти функції розвідувальні.
Our task is to maximally transfer reconnaissance, clearing operations, and assaults to robots. They were usually performed by sappers, engineers, ordinary soldiers, and reconnaissance units. We transfer this to machines that we can afford to lose.
Units like Hartia are embracing the innovation, seeking to save lives as Russia's full-scale invasion continues. It released footage of an attack last month in the northeastern Kharkiv region, which it says was the first documented machine-only ground assault in the war. Reuters was unable to independently verify the claim. This is platoon commander callsign Happy.
Є дрони типу камікадзе, ось там знаходиться.
We have kamikaze drones here. They were the majority of drones used during the assault. We had 3 of them. We mount mines on them, but others can be used too. They get as close to the Russian dugouts as they can. They can also ambush troops, and then they explode.
Domestic production of ground-based remote technology is expanding in Ukraine. Other Ukrainian military units are using similar technology, like remote-controlled stretchers and drones with AI-augmented systems. But Russia's military is quickly adapting, according to Hartia spokesman Detirov, meaning Ukrainian units like his have to continue to innovate, both on and off the battlefield.
News of a hostage release agreement between Israel and Hamas comes bittersweet for Ruth Strum. 2 of her sons were abducted to Gaza, but for now, only one of them is set to be freed. In an interview with Reuters on Thursday, Strum said it's not easy for a mother to hear this.
I don't know whether they're together, though deep inside I feel that they are together. But what will happen at that moment when they're separated and told that one is coming out and one is not?
46-year-old Yaya Horn, pictured on the right on Strum's T-shirt, is the one coming home soon. His younger brother Eitan, on the left, was staying with him at his home in Kibbutz Nir Oz on October 7, 2023. That's when Hamas launched its deadly attack on southern Israel, which triggered the war in Gaza that has laid waste to the Palestinian enclave. Militants abducted the brothers across the border, along with nearly 250 other Israelis and foreigners. Almost 100 of them are still in captivity. Wednesday's ceasefire will see 33 hostages released over the next 6 weeks. The handover of the remaining 65 is due to be negotiated afterwards. Some of them are believed to be dead. The ones to be freed include women and children, men over 50, and sick or wounded people. This suggests Yair may not be well, although there has been no word about his condition. Strum says she talks aloud to her sons all the time, telling them to hang in there. Since their kidnapping, she has thrown herself tirelessly into campaigning for the release of all the hostages. Their faces are plastered on posters across Israel, covering bus stops, stapled to trees, and wrapped around lampposts. While Strum prepares for Yair's return, she continues to picture the moment when she's reunited with both sons. I imagine both their returns, she said. I will be there for them, and whatever they want, they'll get. I'm waiting for that embrace.
I can announce a ceasefire and a hostage deal has been reached between Israel and Hamas.
U.S. President Joe Biden, in the final days of his presidency, confirmed the successful negotiation of a ceasefire in Gaza after more than 15 months of bloodshed.
The deal is structured in 3 phases. Phase 1 will last 6 weeks. It includes a full and complete ceasefire, withdrawal of Israeli forces from all the populated areas of Gaza, and the release of a number of hostages held by Hamas, including women and elderly and the wounded. In exchange, Israel released hundreds of Palestinian prisoners.
The U.S. and fellow mediator Qatar said the ceasefire would take effect on Sunday. It comes after months of on and off negotiations by Egyptian and Qatari mediators, with the backing of the United States. At a news conference in Doha, Qatar's prime minister said the deal includes the release of 33 Israeli hostages, including all women, children, and men over 50 years old. Israel's acceptance of the deal will not be official until it is approved by the country's security cabinet and government. An Israeli official said votes were slated for Thursday. On the streets of Tel Aviv and in Khan Yunis, Israelis and Palestinians both celebrated the news.
We are happy with this victory because the Palestinian people simply want their freedom. Freedom for the Palestinian people. We don't want anything but freedom and to live with dignity without occupation.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres said the priority now must be on getting humanitarian aid into Gaza.
The humanitarian situation is at catastrophic levels, and I call on all parties to facilitate the rapid, unhindered and safe humanitarian relief for all civilians in need.
On October 7, 2023, Hamas-led gunmen broke through security barriers and burst into Israeli border area communities, killing 1,200 soldiers and civilians and abducting over 250 foreign and Israeli hostages. In response, Israel's air and ground war in Gaza has since killed over 46,000 people, according to Gaza Health Ministry figures. Despite Wednesday's breakthrough, residents and medics said Israeli airstrikes killed several people Wednesday evening in Gaza, just hours after the ceasefire deal was reached.
Australia welcomes the announcement of a ceasefire and hostage agreement in Gaza after 15 months of conflict and a devastating loss of civilian life. The Australian government has consistently been part of international calls for a ceasefire and for a release of hostages. This agreement is a constructive step towards peace and stability in the region. Today must mark the beginning of a new chapter for the Israeli and Palestinian people. We hope it will allow the Palestinian people the opportunity to rebuild, reform their governance, which is most necessary, and pursue self-determination.
Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead. We see the consequences all across America, and we've seen it before, more than a century ago. But the American people stood up to the robber barons back then and busted the trusts. They didn't punish the wealthy. They just made the wealthy play by the rules everybody else had to. Workers want rights to earn their fair share. You know, they were dealt into the deal, and it helped put us on a path to building the largest middle class, the most prosperous century any nation in the world has ever seen. And we've got to do that again. In the last 4 years, that is exactly what we've done. People should be able to make as much as they can, but play by the same rules, pay their fair share of taxes. I'm equally concerned about the potential rise of a tech industrial complex that could pose real dangers for our country as well. Americans are being buried under an avalanche of misinformation and disinformation, enabling the abuse of power. The free press is crumbling. Editors are disappearing. Social media is giving up on fact-checking. The truth is smothered by lies told for power and for profit. We must hold the social platforms accountable to protect our children, our families, and our very democracy from the abuse of power.
Officials say a deal for a ceasefire in Gaza is closer than ever. Here are the main points of the proposed agreement, according to an Israeli and a Palestinian official. Initially, 33 Israeli hostages, including women, children, the elderly and wounded, would be set free. If all goes as planned, 16 days into the deal, talks would begin on returning the remaining hostages and the bodies of those who are dead. In return, Israel would free a large number of Palestinian prisoners, saying it'd be, quote, many hundreds. However, anyone who took part in the October 7, 2023 attack would not be released. Israel won't fully withdraw troops from Gaza until all the hostages have been returned, but there will be a phased pullback, with forces remaining at the borders to defend Israeli towns and villages there. Unarmed North Gaza residents would be allowed back, with a system preventing weapons from being moved to the area. The Rafah crossing between Egypt and Gaza would start to work, allowing the sick out of the enclave for treatment. There'd be a significant increase of aid to the Gaza Strip. The UN and other international agencies say the population is facing a severe humanitarian crisis. Israel does allow aid there, but there have been disputes over the amount permitted in. Who will run Gaza after the war is still unknown. It seems this issue was left out of the current proposal due to its complexity and would likely hold up a deal. Israel has said it won't end the war, leaving Hamas in power. It has also rejected the Palestinian Authority, the Western-backed body that exercises limited sovereignty in the occupied West Bank. The international community has said Gaza must be run by Palestinians, but efforts to find alternatives to the main factions have proved largely fruitless. There have been discussions between Israel, UAE and the US over a provisional administration that would run Gaza until a reformed Palestinian Authority can take charge.
I hope, God willing, that the news of the truce that we hear about, God willing, is true, and we return to our homes and our places safely, that things resolve a little and life returns to the way it was before and better. I hope that our children return to their schools and return to their old lives. Enough suffering and pain, enough. We didn't live. I mean, a year or two of our lives have been wasted for nothing.
Our hearts have reached our throats. We have reached a stage where we cannot move forward now. We want to conclude the exchange deal and conclude the truce agreement to save what can be saved. Each of us must wear a life jacket after this war, after these massacres, after the destruction and devastation. Everything has been destroyed. Nothing in Gaza is fit for life.
It gives us great pleasure in Qatar, Egypt, and the United States to announce the success of the joint mediation efforts and the fact that the two belligerents in the Gaza Strip have reached a deal on the prisoner and the hostage swap and announce a ceasefire in the hopes of reaching a permanent ceasefire between the two sides, as well as allowing the access of large quantities of relief aid to the Palestinian brothers in the Gaza Strip. The Israeli government will be taking the internal measures, after which the agreement will enter into effect on Sunday, January 19th. The exact timing will be identified later. The phase 1 of the agreement will go on for 42 days, and it will include a ceasefire and the withdrawal of Israeli forces to the east away from populated areas. Hamas will be releasing 33 Israeli captives, including civilian women and female recruits, as well as children, elderly people, as well as civilian ill people and wounded, in return for a number of prisoners who are being held in Israeli prisons.
Thousands of firefighters continued to battle blazes in and around Los Angeles County on Wednesday, making gains in some areas. But officials were on high alert for the eruption of new fires as powerful winds were forecast.
The combination of low humidity and strong winds has further dried out the brush, increasing the risk of fire. The danger has not yet passed, so please prioritize your safety.
The Palisades Fire and the Eaton Fire have consumed an area the size of Washington, D.C., and have left entire neighborhoods leveled. At least 24 people have died. LA Fire Captain Eric Scott posted a video on social media showing utter destruction in Malibu.
So here we are on the front of PCH, this portion of Malibu, where all of these homes were just leveled. And we wanted to show you the amount of true destruction that took through here, so you get an idea of how much effort it's going to take to clean all of this up.
Aaron Lubley, who lost his Altadena home in the Eaton fire, set up a table with water, food, and necessary supplies for anyone who needs it.
When you stare at your front door that's gone, and you have the few moments to contemplate, what does this really mean to my life? I had to find some meaning in why this happened.
Several schools in the Pacific Palisades neighborhood were seriously damaged in the fires. On Wednesday, students and teachers displaced from a Palisades elementary school were welcomed for classes at a school in Brentwood. Juliette Herman, the principal at Palisades Charter Elementary, said she was grateful for community.
We know that a lot of students will be apprehensive, and we're expecting, some big feelings today. I'm going to be walking classrooms, and we have mental health professionals here to help both students and staff, because we have staff members who lost their homes as well.
This fire is 23,713 acres with 19% containment, with 5,104 personnel assigned to the incident. Firefighters observed 30 to 40 mile per hour winds with low humidity. When you look at the aerial view of the Palisades fire, you may not be able to tell, but however, infrared flights last night indicated there are still numerous hot spots burning within the fire footprint. Very close attention was paid to address any flare-ups swiftly as to prevent any fire spread outside of the perimeter. As we enter into the third day of this additional wind event, I urge everyone to stay alert. The combination of low humidity and strong winds has further dried out the brush, increasing the risk of fire. The danger has not yet passed, so please prioritize your safety.
A Congolese court has sentenced 3 Chinese citizens to 7 years in prison after they were found guilty of illegal activities linked to the artisanal mining sector. A judge in Bukavu found the defendants guilty on Tuesday of money laundering, illegal purchase, and possession of mineral substances and other charges. They were also ordered to pay a fine equivalent to $600,000 and permanently banned from Congo once their sentences are served. Throughout the trial, the defendants said they had not known they were breaking Congolese law. They were acquitted of charges, including fraud and illegal mineral extraction, for lack of evidence. Their lawyers said they would appeal. Christian Wenduma is a lawyer representing local communities.
This is an educational trial that should normally serve as a wake-up call to all Chinese nationals who think they can leave China, arrive in Kitutu, Kibe, Lagushwa, Kamituga, or Mwanga, and behave as if they were in their own room, without even paying the hotel fees. And that is what brings us joy.
The trio are the first Chinese nationals to stand trial since Democratic Republic of Congo launched its latest push to crack down on the unlicensed extraction of the minerals in its conflict-torn east.
There will never be an enemies list within the Department of Justice.
President-elect Donald Trump's pick for Attorney General Pam Bondi vowed not to use the U.S. Justice Department to target people based on their politics if she's confirmed for the position. But she dodged direct questions about investigating people scorned by the president-elect during her testimony on Wednesday before the Senate Judiciary Committee considering her nomination.
I will not politicize that office. I will not target people simply because of their political affiliation.
Bondi served as Florida's Attorney General from 2011 to 2019 and helped defend Trump during his 2019 impeachment trial, which ended in his acquittal on charges of pressuring Ukraine to investigate his rival, now President Joe Biden. She depicted herself as an independent-minded prosecutor, focused on issues like the opioid epidemic and human trafficking, but declined to rule out investigations of Trump's adversaries. Democratic Senator Adam Schiff questioned her about pursuing a case against Special Counsel Jack Smith, who brought 2 now dismissed criminal cases against Trump.
Will you investigate Jack Smith?
Senator, I haven't seen the file. I haven't seen the investigation. I haven't looked at anything. It would be irresponsible of me to make a commitment regarding anything.
Trump repeatedly vowed during the campaign to use the Justice Department to target people who had investigated or criticized him. Democratic senators pressed Bondi about her independence from Trump, noting 2 of Trump's first-term attorneys general fell out of favor after they refused to intervene on matters of interest to Trump. Here's Senator Sheldon Whitehouse.
I think the concern is that weaponization of the Justice Department may well occur under your tenure, and we want to make sure that that's not the case, that you remain independent.
Bondi received broad praise from Republicans on the panel, including committee chairman Chuck Grassley.
In short, Ms. Bondi is highly qualified. And of course, as we all know, a change is desperately needed. When confirmed, Ms. Bondi will take the helm at a very turbulent time for this country and for that department. The Justice Department's is infected with political decision-making, while its leaders refuse to acknowledge that reality.
When asked about potential pardons for those accused of taking part in the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol, Bondi said she would evaluate them on a case-by-case basis if asked.
Our priority now must be to ease the tremendous suffering caused by this conflict. The United Nations stands ready to support the implementation of this deal and scale up the delivery of sustained humanitarian relief to the countless Palestinians who continue to suffer. It is imperative that this ceasefire removes the significant security and political obstacles to delivering aid across Gaza so that we can support a major increase in urgent life-saving humanitarian support. The humanitarian situation is at catastrophic levels, and I call on all parties to facilitate the rapid, unhindered and safe humanitarian relief for all civilians in need.
The people of Syria need every ounce of help they can get to rebuild a country that works for all Syrians. I came here to offer my reassurances that my office, the Human Rights Office of the United Nations, will continue to support inclusive, nationally owned and nationally driven processes. There are still very real threats to Syria's territorial integrity, independence and sovereignty, which must be fully respected and rigorously upheld. Sectoral sanctions have had a negative impact on the enjoyment of rights of people, and the lifting of these sanctions should really be considered very actively. And I've said it publicly, I will continue making strong advocacy for that.
South Korea's impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol was arrested Wednesday, a first for a sitting president of the country. It's the latest turn in a political crisis sparked by his short-lived declaration of martial law last month, which eventually saw Yoon hiding out at his residence for weeks protected by personal security to avoid authorities who wanted to detain him on grounds of insurrection. More than 3,000 police officers marched on Yoon's residence Wednesday, and a motorcade later took him to the country's anti-corruption agency, the CIO, or the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials. South Korean journalists snapped the moment he stepped out of the car and into the agency's offices in Gwacheon, just south of Seoul. Investigators have 48 hours to question him. After that, they must release him or seek a warrant to detain him for longer. In a video message recorded before his detention, Yoon said he turned himself in for questioning to avoid any bloodshed and disputed the legality of the investigation and arrest.
Today, when I saw them break into the security area using firefighting equipment, I decided to respond to the CIO's investigation, despite it being an illegal investigation, to prevent unsavory bloodshed. However, that doesn't mean I am acknowledging the investigation of the CIO.
Earlier in the morning, scuffles broke out between Yoon's supporters and police who were trying to arrest him. Many of his supporters have compared his situation and that of US President-elect Donald Trump, who claimed voter fraud contributed to his election defeat in 2020. Yoon has also made unsubstantiated claims of election fraud, one of the reasons he gave to justify his short-lived martial law declaration. His lawyers have said the arrest warrant is illegal. They say it was issued by a court in the wrong jurisdiction and the team set up to investigate him has no legal mandate to do so. Lawmakers voted to impeach Yoon last month after his martial law order on December 3rd ushered in unprecedented political turmoil. In a previous attempt to arrest Yoon on January 3rd, the Presidential Security Service and military guards blocked CIO investigators in a 6-hour standoff. The agency has since apologized for initially failing to arrest Yoon on that day. Separately, the country's constitutional court is deliberating whether to uphold Yoon's impeachment and permanently remove him from office or restore his presidential powers.
South Korea's Yoon Suk-yeol was arrested on Wednesday in relation to a criminal insurrection investigation. The impeached president says he was only cooperating with what he called an illegal probe to avoid bloodshed. Here's what's expected to unfold in the coming days. Yoon has been taken to the offices of the CIO, or Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials. The agency is leading the investigation into Yoon's role in declaring martial law on December the 3rd. But it does not have the authority to prosecute the president. The interrogation facilities include a newly created rest area with a sofa to accommodate Yoon, Yonhap News Agency reported. The CIO prepared a questionnaire of more than 200 pages for Yoon. However, a CIO official said Yoon is refusing to talk and has not agreed to have interviews with investigators recorded on video. Authorities have 48 hours to question Yoon. After that time frame, they must seek a warrant to detain him for up to 20 days or release him. 2 of the CIO's 4 investigative divisions currently have no staff, and just 9 prosecutors and the deputy head are handling Yoon's case. That magnified questions over whether the agency has the capacity to successfully build a case against Yoon. While in custody, Yoon is expected to be held in the Seoul Detention Center when he's not being questioned. Other high-profile figures, including former President Park Geun-hye and Samsung Electronics chairman J.Y. Lee, have previously spent time there. The embattled leader will probably be assigned a solitary cell, according to precedent and due to his status. His cell is likely bigger and better appointed than the standard 71 square feet single cells.
Esta parece ser tanzaniana, é uma delegação tanzaniana. Vamos ver como isto está. Quantas pessoas vão?
Amid rows of homes reduced to piles of ash by the Palisades fire, stands a house that held out against the flames and smoke that scorched northwest Los Angeles last week. It belongs to avid environmentalist Dr. Karina Mayer and her husband Michael Kovac, an architect who designed the building with an emphasis on sustainability and wildfire resilience. Kovac and Mayer fled their home when the fire started last week and watched remotely as their security cameras captured the fire drawing near.
Here's the house in a happier time, the day before. And then the first time we see fire, big fire in the background is just 3 hours later.
Eventually the power went out, leaving the fate of their home in the dark. After the fire had passed through the area, photos of the destruction began to appear online. In the background of a photo of their neighbor's destroyed home, the couple saw their home standing intact. The sight brought mixed feelings for Mayer.
It really does look like an apocalypse or a war zone, with everything in ash and rubble and still fires smoldering and smoking and burning, and seeing our house standing there. So there is a bit, I guess, of survivor's guilt, if you want to use that term. And I mean, we're proud and happy and that our efforts paid off, but we never imagined a scene so stark as this.
Some of the features that the pair believe helped save their home include fire-resistant cladding, a planted roof, and sprinkler nozzles that disperse fire retardant on demand. In addition, they incorporated what is called defensive space around their home. That minimizes the risk of flames jumping from one structure to the next.
Designing the house so close to nature and knowing the history of Southern California, we were acutely aware that at some point in the house's life there would be a serious fire, nearby at the very least. And so we designed the house to be both fire resilient and sustainable. And happily those two systems are often one and the same.
The Palisades fire is one of many to ravage Los Angeles in the past week, leaving at least 24 dead and an estimated 12,000 structures damaged or destroyed. The firestorm is already the costliest in U.S. history in terms of insured losses. A Herculean rebuilding effort lies ahead, likely to cost billions of dollars. As that recovery begins, Kovac and Mayer hope that society will take seriously the threats of climate change and extreme weather events and come up with smarter, realistic solutions.
We're not going to turn the climate ship around anytime soon, so in the meantime, whether it's dealing with floods in the southeast or hurricanes or wildfires in California, we have to be realistic about what those threats are and design accordingly.
Well, I gotta finish first. But yes, it'll be a good sword, I promise.
So we just wanted to give a smile to people coming in right now. So we had 3 or 4 strolling magicians to come in and at least perform a few card tricks for people coming in, and at least to get some positivity inside this inside the situation.
Magic is so cool, and it's just like fun to watch and stuff like that. So it really takes your mind off of everything that's happening.
So we do have a one aisle where people can just drive in and they can drive through, and then they can pick up water, soda, batteries, flashlights, and pet food, and then they can go downstairs and pick up, shoes for their kids and toys. We do have Vents who is donating over 1,000 pieces of clothing and shoes. We have a lot of brand new items, such like sheets and pillows. Necessity that people need, right now. When you see that those people were left the house without anything, the only thing they have right now is what they were wearing that morning.
life-threatening and destructive and widespread winds are already here. For this significant wind event, we are taking an aggressive lean-forward posture, and the LAFD has staffed all available resources, strategically placing fire patrols and engines in the unimpacted high fire risk areas in the city. We are carefully managing our operations to ensure that we can quickly respond to any new fires, in addition to the increased call volume across the city of Los Angeles. I urge, and everybody here urges you to remain alert as danger has not yet passed. Please follow all evacuation warnings and orders without delay and prioritize your safety.
Mr. Hegseth, I do not believe that you are qualified to meet the overwhelming demands of this job.
Democratic U.S. Senator Jack Reed made it clear in his opening statement that he did not support President-elect Donald Trump's pick for Defense Secretary. During Pete Hegseth's first confirmation hearing, he faced scrutiny over his inexperience, alleged drunkenness, and past opposition to women in combat. Democratic senators also referenced a 2017 sexual assault allegation against Hegseth that did not result in charges and which he denies.
A small handful of anonymous sources were allowed to drive a smear campaign and agenda about me because our left-wing media in America today, sadly, doesn't care about the truth.
Democratic Senator Tim Kaine said that wasn't the case.
They're not anonymous. And I'll just conclude and say this to the chairman. You claim that this was all anonymous. We have seen records with names attached to all of these, including the name of your own mother. So don't make this into some anonymous press thing. We have seen multiple names of colleagues consistently throughout your career that have talked about your abusive actions,
Chairman,
attitudes,
I think he's
words,
over
and
his time.
statements
He's way
to women.
over his time.
I now yield.
The former Fox News host, who is a veteran, is one of the most controversial figures ever nominated to be Secretary of Defense. Republican Senator Roger Wicker acknowledged Hegseth was not a typical choice and that he isn't perfect.
Admittedly, this nomination is unconventional. The nominee is unconventional. Regarding his personal conduct, Mr. Hegseth has admitted to falling short, as we all do from time to time.
Several Democratic senators, including Elizabeth Warren, also criticized his past remarks about women serving in the U.S. military.
I'm quoting you from the podcast. Women shouldn't be in combat at all.
He later told Republican Senator Joni Ernst, herself a veteran, that he would support women in combat roles.
So as Secretary of Defense, will you appoint a senior level official dedicated to sexual assault prevention and response?
Senator, as we have discussed, yes, I will.
Hegseth needs a majority of senators to vote in favor of his confirmation to win the job. Republicans hold a 3-vote edge, so he can lose support from no more than 3 Republican senators if Democrats and independents unite against him.
One of your colleagues said that you got drunk at an event at a bar and chanted, "Kill all Muslims." Another colleague, not anonymous, we have this, said that you took co-workers to a strip club. You were drunk, you tried to dance with strippers, you had to be held off the stage, and one of your employees in that event filed a sexual harassment charge as a result of it. Now, I know you deny these things, but isn't that the kind of behavior that, if true, would be disqualifying for somebody to be Secretary of Defense? Senator, anonymous false charges. They're not anonymous. And I'll just conclude and say this to the chairman. You claim that this was all anonymous. We have seen records with names attached to all of these, including the name of your own mother. So don't make this into some anonymous press thing. We have seen multiple names of colleagues consistently throughout your career that have talked about your abusive actions,
Chairman,
attitudes,
I think he's
words,
over
and
his time.
statements
He's way
to women.
over his time.
I now yield.
Among President-elect Donald Trump's nominees for top positions in his administration, Pete Hegseth is one of the most controversial to face Senate confirmation hearings. Here's what we know about Trump's pick to be the next U.S. Secretary of Defense. After graduating from Princeton in 2003, Hegseth served in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Guantanamo Bay as an Army National Guard officer, earning 2 Bronze Stars. In 2013, he received a master's from Harvard University. But the former Fox News personality has been criticized for lacking the management experience needed to lead 1.3 million active duty service members and the nearly 1 million civilians who work for the nation's military. Since Trump tapped Hegseth for the job, allegations of alcohol abuse and sexual misconduct emerged. A California police report showed a woman filed a sexual assault complaint against him in 2017. Hegseth was never charged and has denied any wrongdoing. He has also denied allegations of excessive drinking and financial mismanagement at veterans organizations. He was bombarded with questions about these accusations during a meeting with senators back in December on Capitol Hill.
You misspent funds, mistreated women, were intoxicated on the job. Do you have any comment about that reporting at all?
Okay, guys, we're not doing questions.
It's like a gaggle in the locker room after being coach.
So that article suggests you have an alcohol problem.
Okay, thank you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Despite allegations of misconduct in his private and personal life, Trump has reiterated his support for Hegseth. Hegseth spent much of the past few weeks in the Senate, meeting with Republican senators whose support he must win to secure the 51 yes votes he will need to be confirmed to lead the Pentagon. To date, there has been no public announcement that any Republican will not vote for Hegseth. The Armed Services Committee will vote on Hegseth's nomination after hearing his testimony, sending it for consideration for the full Senate. U.S. officials on Tuesday said President Joe Biden plans to relax sanctions on Cuba, just days before Donald Trump takes office. The measures were expected to give Cuba some economic relief in the short term, as it battles a crippling economic crisis. But some Cubans in Havana viewed Biden's plans as too little, too late.
He promised many things at the beginning, that he would help Cuba in many ways that he really never fulfilled. But this will be his final goodwill.
Well, we have to see what Trump does next. Knowing him, it's possible that they quit this week and Trump comes and everything goes backward. I see it as a somewhat useless action because how many advantages will we have? For how long? A couple of weeks? A few days?
The measures Biden plans include a reversal of several hardline restrictions put in place by Trump during his first term. A senior administration official said the measures include plans to lift the U.S. designation of Cuba as a state sponsor of terrorism and to undo a Trump order that restricted financial transactions with some Cubans. Officials said Biden expects the move would lead to the release of political prisoners in Havana. They did not specify the number of prisoners or give a time frame. In a brief letter to Congress, Biden said his steps were, quote, necessary to the national interests of the United States and will expedite a transition to democracy in Cuba. The Cuban government did not immediately respond to a Reuters request for comment.
For the past several months, Hamas has played the spoiler. But over the past several weeks, our intensive efforts have brought us to the brink of full and final agreement. On Sunday, the United States, Qatar, and Egypt put forward a final proposal. The ball is now in Hamas's court. If Hamas accepts, the deal is ready to be concluded and implemented. I believe we will get a ceasefire. And whether we get there in the remaining days of our administration or after January 20th, I believe the deal will follow closely the terms of the agreement that President Biden put forward last May and our administration rallied the world behind.
You have the blood of hundreds of thousands of innocent people on your hands. We have spent a
Thank you. I respect your views. Please allow me to share mine. Thank you.
appeal to your humanity.
For over 450 days, Israel has committed genocide against the Palestinian people. We have sent over $25 billion to Israel.
How do you do all that and then sit here and tell these people, civilized people, that you are doing what? Kill, your policy for the Middle East. Kill, and kill.
South Korea's suspended President Yoon Suk-yeol did not show up for his impeachment trial on Tuesday, forcing the Constitutional Court to adjourn the opening session within minutes. Yoon's legal advisor had earlier said the embattled leader would not attend the session, arguing that the authorities' attempts to detain Yoon prevented him from expressing his position at the trial. Yoon has been holed up in a seaside villa in Seoul for weeks. Acting Chief Justice Moon Hyung-bae said if Yoon is still absent for the next session on Thursday, the trial proceedings would go ahead with his legal team representing him. Outside the court, one of Yoon's lawyers said the president will decide whether to attend court after a discussion with his defense team. He also again insisted that an arrest warrant for Yoon was invalid. The warrant was issued after Yoon refused to appear for questioning over a separate criminal investigation for alleged insurrection following his botched martial law attempt in December. The martial law fiasco is why lawmakers voted to impeach him, giving the Constitutional Court 180 days to decide whether to remove Yoon from office or restore his presidential powers.
South African rescuers have hauled up dozens of miners and dead bodies from an abandoned gold mine. That was according to police on Tuesday, after 2 days of operations at the site in the town of Stilfontein. Police began laying siege to the mine in August as part of a crackdown on illegal mining. Authorities have said survivors will face illegal mining and immigration charges. Here is Mzukizi Jam, a spokesperson at the South African National Civics Organization.
Yesterday they told us that about more than 400 people are still stuck down. They need to be extracted. And they also told us that the number of dead bodies is actually more than 100.
Police had previously cut off food and water supplies in an attempt to force the miners to the surface so they could be arrested. Now they're retrieving survivors and dead bodies. Footage issued by a miners' rights group on Monday had shown dozens of corpses and skeletal survivors inside the mine.
If a child has a fever and is sprinkled with sacred water, they recover. Voodoo is as sweet as sugar for anyone who practices it with faith. It is not witchcraft meant to harm others. One simply needs faith to receive blessings.
Stop saying that voodoo is about voodoo dolls. Voodoo is spirituality. Voodoo is you, it's me. It's the air we breathe. It's the four elements, as we say. Water, air, fire and earth. Voodoo is ecology. Voodoo is respecting nature.
Voodoo goes beyond stigmatization and the fact that I took the time to discover, explore and remove certain veils of fear or illusion. For me, voodoo is communion with the world around us, with all beings. Voodoo is love, it is nature, and it is simply the spirituality of my ancestors.
China's holiday travel rush got into full swing Tuesday. The 40-day Spring Festival saw airports and train stations packed with travellers. After a total 8.4 billion trips last year, authorities predict 2025 will see a record 9 billion domestic journeys. But this year's festival comes with China's economy in the doldrums. It's struggling to recover from years of pandemic lockdowns and a prolonged property slump. All that had some asking if the traditional travel rush could go quiet. At Beijing railway station, travellers were largely optimistic. This man says the mood in his hometown is good, with holiday decorations going up. A student says they're hopeful an improving economy will boost their quality of life over the coming year. But officials may not be so sanguine. The government has rolled out a series of stimulus measures in recent months in a bid to boost demand. That includes interest rate cuts and expanded trade-in schemes for consumer goods. Travel demand at least seems to be holding up, with records expected across all modes of transport. Train trips are forecast to hit 510 million, with 90 million plane trips predicted, both being all-time highs.
Los Angeles firefighters on Monday braced for extreme winds overnight. Hurricane-force winds of up to 75 miles per hour were expected to hit around 4 a.m. on Tuesday, with gusts between 50 and 70 miles per hour forecast to persist through Wednesday. The two main wildfires around the city, the Palisades and Eaton fires, have killed at least 24 people and burned an area the size of Washington, D.C. since they erupted last week. On Monday, thousands of firefighters attacked the blazes from the air and on the ground ahead of the anticipated winds. The same day, Los Angeles City Fire Chief Kristen Crowley reported some progress in containing the Palisades fire.
The fire is 23,713 acres with 14% containment, 5,123 personnel that are assigned.
CAL FIRE meanwhile said that the Eaton fire, which firefighters can be seen battling here, was 33% contained. As of Monday, more than 92,000 people in Los Angeles County were under evacuation orders, while another 89,000 faced evacuation warnings. California Governor Gavin Newsom has said the firestorm could rank as the most devastating natural disaster in U.S. history in terms of cost. President Joe Biden has said he told local officials to, quote, spare no expense in fighting the fires, and on Monday gave more details on how Washington plans to help victims.
People impacted by these fires are going to receive one-time payment of $770, one-time payment, so they can quickly purchase things like water, baby formula, and prescriptions. So far, nearly 6,000 survivors have registered to do just that, and $5.1 million has gone out. And I encourage everyone who has been impacted to get assistance.
Separately, the LA County District Attorney's Office said 9 people had been arrested for burglarizing fire-stricken areas. They said one other person was arrested for arson, for allegedly attempting to light a tree on fire in the city of Azusa, to the northeast of the city. Finally, the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power was sued on Monday. The suit claims that the department failed to properly manage water supplies critical to fighting the deadly Palisades fire. Newsom and other top Democrats in the state have been the target of escalating criticism from the right for their handling of the crisis. Top Republicans in Congress are considering imposing conditions on disaster aid, accusing the state's Democratic leadership of mismanaging water resources and forests.
Firefighters raced to make as much progress as they could in containing the massive wildfires burning in Los Angeles County before the return of high winds, which LA Mayor Karen Bass said were forecast to be severe.
The National Weather Service is predicting close to hurricane force level winds, and so we're making urgent preparations.
The Palisades fire and the Eaton fire have claimed the lives of at least 24 people, leveled whole neighborhoods, and burned an area the size of Washington, D.C. Winds of up to 70 miles per hour were forecast for Monday through Wednesday. LA County Fire Chief Anthony Maroney.
The anticipated winds, combined with low humidities and low fuel moistures, will keep the fire threat in all of Los Angeles County critical.
The winds threatened the hard-won progress crews have made so far. Over the weekend, firefighters beat back the Palisades fire from advancing toward the populous San Fernando Valley in the north. But officials warned the entire Los Angeles County population of nearly 10 million people to be ready to evacuate. That's in addition to the tens of thousands who have already left, with many now in shelters and flooding donation centers. Others lined up in their cars, hoping to briefly return home to grab some precious belongings. On Monday, Los Angeles County Sheriff Robert Luna asked residents for their patience especially in the Altadena area ravaged by the Eaton fire.
For the Altadena area, we are in the third day of grid searching. It is a very grim task. Please be patient with us. People are saying, I just want to go look at my house and I want to see what's left. We know that, but we have people literally looking for the remains of your neighbors.
Severe fire weather conditions will continue through Wednesday. Please be assured that all fire departments and all law enforcement agencies in the area will be prepared. The anticipated winds, combined with low humidities and low fuel moistures, will keep the fire threat in all of Los Angeles County critical.
For the Altadena area, we are in the third day of grid searching. It is a very grim task, and we, unfortunately, every day we're doing this, we're running across the remains of individual community members. That is not easy work, very sad to report, and I believe that work is not only going to continue, but I believe will continue to find remains. So please be patient with us. People are saying, I just want to go look at my house and I want to see what's left. We know that, but we have people literally looking for the remains of your neighbors.
The fire is 23,713 acres with 14% containment, 5,123 personnel that are assigned.
Over the last 36 hours, we have seen very little fire growth on this incident, which is a positive. However, it's important to remember, as was just stated, we are still under a red flag event, and we will continue to surge resources to the priorities around this fire. The priorities right now are extinguishing any flare-ups around structures, responding to any hotspots on the interior around structures, and primarily building line for community protection.
At least 400 illegal miners remained trapped underground in South Africa 2 months after a police raid, a group working on behalf of the miners said on Monday. The group also released the following graphic videos it received from miners that emerged on January 10th when a pulley was restored to the bottom of the cavern. The first video reportedly shows miners' bodies wrapped in sacks and plastic, while living miners who are still stuck underground plead for help. A Reuters reporter counted what looked like 36 bodies in the footage. Reuters could not independently confirm that the body-shaped objects were corpses.
Look at this. Look, how many days must you live in a situation like this?
A second video shows shirtless miners looking emaciated with their ribs protruding. The two videos were obtained by the South African miners' rights group Mining Affected Communities United in Action, or MACUA. Reuters verified the video but was unable to independently verify the location or date they were taken. A spokesperson for the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy said bodies had been retrieved from the mine, but said no further details could be divulged ahead of an official report. They added that South African authorities are at the mine with machinery, preparing for a planned rescue this week. The South Africa Police Service did not respond to a request for comment. The standoff began in November when police blocked the miners' supply of food and water to force them out and arrest them for illegally entering the abandoned mine. The miners were searching for leftover gold, an issue that has plagued South Africa for decades.
宮崎市では先ほど9時19分頃の地震で最大震度5弱を観測しました。こちらは地震発生当時の MRT 車内の映像です。避難をされる際は車の走行状況などにも十分に注意して落ち着いて、またスマートフォンの明かりであったり。
In the streets of Wad Madani, civilians and soldiers celebrated what could be a turning point in Sudan's devastating civil war. The strategically important city, capital of El Jazeera State, was recaptured from the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces by the Sudanese army over the weekend. The deputy leader of the armed forces, General Shams el-Din Kabashi, told troops and residents that it was a big victory. But the army is not stopping until every inch of this country is cleansed. War broke out in April 2023 over the integration of the Sudan Armed Forces and the RSF. It has created one of the world's largest humanitarian crises, pushed more than 12 million people from their homes, and plunged half the population into hunger. The RSF's occupation of Al Jazeera has turned the fertile state into one at risk of famine. Residents and eyewitnesses say villages were emptied out in violent raids as fields lay fallow or were set on fire. Alam Abdul Qadir is a lawyer in Wad Madani.
Those people exhausted us in Madani. They looted our belongings and warehouses. They broke into houses, and if they didn't find anything from certain people, they would beat them.
The RSF denies such accusations and says it is fighting rogue actors who are committing abuses. Its leader, Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo, has admitted defeat in Wad Madani, but insisted that the battle is not over. The army's relatively swift takeover of Wad Madani comes after weeks of advances in surrounding villages. It is newly equipped with armaments and recruits to the Allied forces. The Joint Forces, a collection of former rebel groups, as well as Sudan Shield, led by an RSF defector, participated in the assault. Sources within the RSF say its soldiers were exhausted by airstrikes and dwindling stocks of ammunition and supplies. Eyewitnesses said the RSF withdrew north towards other towns in the state and the capital Khartoum. If the army is able to regain full control of El Jazeera State, that could be pivotal in its efforts to choke the RSF supply lines to Khartoum and elsewhere. The RSF still controls most of the capital, though the army has made gains.
"2024 was the hottest year on record. We have already passed through the 1.5 degree that was supposed to keep us safe. Millions are being displaced, California is on fire, and 3/4 of all wildlife has disappeared since the 1970s.
Our government's plans will bring us to 3 degrees of warming. 3 degrees of warming. This will destroy everything.
This is a wake-up call to the government's negotiators, because according to the information we are hearing, very concrete measures are to be taken with regard to pensions, which will have an impact on all workers in this country, and particularly on the railway workers whom I represent, since the preferential schemes, as they are called, will be abolished, resulting in longer careers and having a financial impact on the total amount of pensions.
The artist designed the artwork based on the concept we created this year. Then we used AI to help plot and define the outlines. After that, we use GPS to mark the coordinates on the ground, before sketching and placing scaled wooden stakes, connecting them with ropes to achieve the desired positions. Finally, we planted different varieties of rainbow rice, resulting in our envisioned image.
Seeing it now, I feel so touched and happy. I can't believe our Neo sub-district has developed this much. In the future, if I'm at the shop, I'll definitely encourage people to visit here, our hometown. It's truly unique, with variegated rice in a variety of colours, like the pastel purple rice, which I absolutely love. It's so beautiful.
I just needed to come out and do something to help people. Sorry, I feel so bad for the people. So just wanted to come help somebody. That's all I can do. I can't give a bunch of money, but I can come and give my time.
Worst part about the fire was my dad's school is getting burned down. Kids cannot go to school. Kids and grown-ups are homeless. They don't have anywhere to live.
Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky said on Sunday that he's ready to hand over captured North Korean soldiers to their leader, Kim Jong-un. Zelensky said Saturday that Ukraine had captured 2 North Koreans in Russia's Kursk region. Now he says he would hand them over in exchange for Ukrainian soldiers held captive in Russia.
If Kim Jong-un remembers these citizens at all and can arrange an exchange for our soldiers held in Russia, we can transfer these soldiers.
In a post on X, Zelensky shared a video showing the interrogation of 2 bandaged men who were presented as North Korean soldiers. Reuters chose to blur their faces and could not independently verify the video's location, date, authenticity, nor the affiliation of the people it shows. In the video, one of the alleged North Korean soldiers says through an interpreter that he had been told he was on a training exercise. He appears to say that he wanted to live in Ukraine, but if he was ordered to return to North Korea, he would go. It marks the first time Ukraine has announced the capture of North Korean soldiers alive. Kyiv and its Western allies say North Korean troops entered the war on Russia's side last October.
We now assess that there are some 10,000 North Korean soldiers in total in Russia.
Ukrainian and Western assessments calculate that around 11,000 troops from Russia's ally, North Korea, have now been deployed in the Kursk region to support Moscow's forces. Russia has neither confirmed nor denied their presence. A South Korean lawmaker, briefed by the country's spy agency, said on Monday that North Korean troop fatalities and injuries in combat against Ukrainian forces have likely exceeded 3,000. They attributed that rising number to a lack of understanding of modern warfare and the way Russia used the North Korean military. The lawmaker also said that North Korean authorities appear to have called for its troops to commit suicide to evade capture.
We've been adding some time to the clock. Have to think in that sort of generational. Okay, we've just been getting an update from Mission Control. We are standing down today's launch attempt to troubleshoot a vehicle subsystem issue that will take us beyond our launch window. We are reviewing opportunities for our next launch attempt.
They cancelled our right to vote. I don't care about Georgescu or Lasconi. It's about the right to cast the ballot.
Foreign ministers and top diplomats from Western and Middle Eastern countries met with Syria's new foreign minister on Sunday, held in the Saudi capital Riyadh. It was the first such regional gathering on Syria since President Bashar al-Assad was ousted last month. In attendance were ministers from Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates and Qatar, as well as representatives from Bahrain, Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon and Turkey. Envoys were also present from the European Union and the United States. The meeting was the first to include both Syria's new rulers and top Western officials, and was led by Saudi Arabia. It follows a meeting of top diplomats from the US, UK, France, Germany and the EU held on Syria in Rome on Thursday. Some regional players have previously signalled concerns over Syria's new Islamist rulers and what they need to do to get international recognition.
And posing a new challenge to exhausted firefighters.
The Palisade incident is now at 21,596 acres and 11% contained.
Ana winds that fanned the infernos are expected to wreak more havoc in the coming days, said LA County Fire Chief Anthony Marone.
Elevated to critical fire weather conditions are predicted to continue through Wednesday. These winds, combined with dry air and dry vegetation, will keep the fire threat in Los Angeles County high.
7 neighboring states, the federal government, and Canada have rushed to aid California. Beyond those who lost their homes, tens of thousands of people remained without power, and millions have been exposed to poorer air quality as the fires carry traces of metals, plastics, and other synthetic materials. President Joe Biden declared the fires a major disaster and said the U.S. government would reimburse 100% of the recovery for the next 6 months.
I'll take you in the back. So that's it.
And because of that, his air condenser burst.
I evacuated, but I was watching some news clippings, and I realized the fires are out of control. So I decided to come and take a look, and there was nobody on the way back. Nobody. It was like eerie. But I was scared. And it's just like I knew it can be done. I mean, I'm not stupid. I did not want to come here to die for possessions, but I knew it was doable, and I'll feel bad if I didn't try, you know?
So I was trying to stop the fire from the other guy.
I hear people in the military saying how when you're going to the battle, you're basically thinking all kinds of feelings about, I don't know if I should be doing this and that. But then they say once you're in the front line, you forget all about it. Basically, you have to fight for your survival, right? So basically, when I arrived here and I saw this, I got in that mode. God help me. I mean, I promised a big candle when I go back to Greece. And we do that.
We have much more of this climate whiplash sort of phenomenon where we have very, very wet years followed by very dry years. And that is in and of itself very problematic because it creates more susceptibility in places that didn't used to be quite so high risk. Well, the reality is that we have urban water systems that are not designed to fight wildfires or put out entire sort of, mountainsides that are on fire. And we are having, very high severity events that are unprecedented. We had extremely wet winters in 2023 and 24, which encouraged a lot of vegetative growth. And then followed by an unprecedentedly dry few months. And then the third component, of course, was these ferocious winds. And so literally sort of a perfect firestorm of factors that came together to create an extreme demand for water in a very short amount of time.
The two black boxes on the Jeju passenger jet that crashed last month in South Korea stopped recording 4 minutes before the accident. That's according to a statement released on Saturday by the country's Ministry of Transport, which added authorities now plan to investigate why they stopped recording. It's a setback for investigators who believe the flight data and cockpit voice recorders were key to finding the cause of the worst aviation disaster on South Korean soil. The plane, which had departed the Thai capital Bangkok for Muan in southwestern South Korea on December 29th, crash-landed and burst into flames after overshooting the regional airport's runway. Just minutes before the crash, the pilot reported a bird strike. 2 cabin crew survived and 179 people were killed. The recovered voice recorder was initially analysed in South Korea, but when data was found to be missing, it was sent to a US laboratory. One former accident investigator at the Ministry of Transport suggested the cause of the missing data could be loss of all power, including backup, though this was very rare.